listening to you all, what does that say about the old-fashioned concept of authority for curators? How has that changed?
The idea of authority is definitely very different from the idea of authority 50 years ago. I would say there's a certain amount of authority that 50 years ago would have said that if you have these 5 paintings by a given artist, I can tell you this is the best one, this is the second best one, this is the third best one, and so on. And I think today we're much more open-minded that maybe this one's the best one on this criteria, or for me, or according to that question. But if you approach it, if you ask a different question, if you approach it from a different angle, maybe this is the painting that is really worth looking at the most right now.
What about you, Maria? What do you consider to be, on the one hand, your responsibility towards your audience, and what instead you consider the gift that you want to give to your audience?
Well, it's interesting because I think that curator thing kind of happened to me. I didn't really opt into it. I started doing what I do for myself, and I still do it for myself, and it's astounding to me that there's so many people who sort of follow along, but my responsibility is to myself, and hopefully to help them enrich their lives in some way. But to Anne's point, it's interesting because I don't think I live in that triangle. It's between me and the cultural artifact, and the audience is this sort of byproduct of it, which delights me to no end when people find meaning in it. But what's most interesting to me is that to them, they see me as a person, not as some entity the way that a museum could be. A recent sort of slightly embarrassing example, in a somewhat short period of time, I ended up writing a lot about these archival love letters and poetry and things related to love. And then within a few days, not only did I get emails from personal friends saying, oh, I really enjoyed these things, are you in love? But also from random strangers on Twitter who, to them, there's a correlation between the material and the person behind it. So these people on Twitter would ask me, are you the person in love? Which to me is astounding. And what's interesting is that these pieces that people interpret as having coming from a very personal place are also the ones that resonate the most widely. In my experience, this is the stuff that gets the most shared. Why? Because anyone, in this example, anyone who's ever been in love knows that breathless feeling of the entire centripetal force of the universe converging into that one person so that her shimmer consumes everything else and nothing else matters, nothing else even exists. And when you find a 100-year-old love letter that articulates that with more color, more dimension, and more depth than you yourself possibly could, and you're at once more complete in your understanding of yourself, but also less alone, that's powerful stuff. And I think that's what all great art does. That's what we try to capture on the walls of our museums and our homes. But whether we call it curation or something else, making these moments possible, these moments of profound introspection simultaneously with boundless connection to the rest of humanity, that's what it's really about to me.
How do you maintain that position of credibility in journalism today?
I'll get shot by someone, but I don't think we ever necessarily had it. And we convinced ourselves we did because we had the monopoly on the press. I think that there's a very changing relationship here that says that you earn authority. You're not necessarily granted it by inheritance or by the equipment you have. And that's a very hard lesson for my colleagues to learn because they thought that this is what we have and this is what people want and we know it because they've always wanted it. They just couldn't hear otherwise.
How do you communicate to all of these different people that are crowdsourcing music? They're not really crowdsourcing, but they are coming to you with a lot of examples. How do you communicate your own individualistic way of selecting and synthesizing?
I never tell people why I think something is bad. That's a very hard thing to do. I just basically, when people come to us with music, I just select what I like. And I think the sum of that over time becomes, says something about what we like and what we how we want to work. But one of the great things about music is that everyone feels like they trust their own taste. I think there are other expressions of art that people might feel like they need a bit of guidance. But most people, they have their favorite music and that's their favorite music.
Can you talk a little bit about what's happening to quality as a result of the democratization of curation?
Maria seems to be itching to answer.
Well, I think, first of all, we have an enormous semantic problem with this term curation, which is, at least as it applies to the online world, which is this grab bag that's supposed to describe all these many things. And one main problem is that we think of it as this binary categorical distinction between the editorial and the curatorial, so the stuff that is purely selection and stuff that has a original opinion or original interpretation, but it's really a spectrum. And on that spectrum, you can fall in many different places, and the best of it is really a hybrid of the curatorial and the editorial. And as far as quality goes, I think there's an element that it sounds trivial, but in my experience, a time requirement and time investment that is necessary in order to curate well or to correlate information in a way that not only brings the meaningful to the surface, but also helps you understand why that matters and how it relates to other things that you might know. And that's a form of almost research that is both curatorial and editorial, and the quality is in that intersection.
Are you interested? Anybody else interested in answering? Tor?
I mean, I think Tor gave part of an answer before. Is there's presumption that scarcity leads to quality, but as Tor was saying, no. The more abundance we have, the more quality will out. I used to be, I will now confess it, a TV critic. Worse at People Magazine and TV Guide. We would have thought that, oh my God, more TV would be worse TV. But of course, so the younger ones in you will think that Gilligan's Island is camp and fun, but if that's all you had, it was torture. So today we have an abundance of television, an abundance of stuff, and sure, there's shit. Of course there is. Naturally there is. That's the state of the world. Times Square has idiots on it, but we don't bomb the city. We find the good where we can. So quality matters, quality will out, but quality becomes more of a responsibility for you than it is necessarily to just rely upon others to anoint it for you, I would say.
I'm wondering how much financial or commercial success is figured into the creative decisions that you're all making or your curation.
That gets to the heart of what's the problem with the internet, because the internet's fundamental funding model is based on advertising and on page views. And so when you're talking about monetizing curation, we get into trouble, because in order to harness advertising, you need to give more people more of what they want in order for them to view the page and generate the page view. And so when you're talking about curation for commerce, that's a different thing. It's giving people more of what they already want. But to me, and there's the opposite of that, I think, is curation for public good, which is giving people more of what they don't yet know they're interested in, and that broadens their horizons and enriches them. And that's hard to do because that doesn't give you the page views. And so monetizing curation in the current model of journalism online is a losing battle. And unless we change that model, curation for public interest is never going to be a financially feasible thing.
When you were speaking, Tor, I was thinking, wow, are you thinking when you make a song, how is this song going to appeal to the most millions of people?
No, he's not, because his songs are weird sometimes. No, really. I cannot. Sorry, just kidding.
I know, I think that's an impossible way of creating anything. But I do think that, I think how it appeals to me. And over time, my taste has appealed to millions of people.
By chance. There you go.
By chance. I think the ones that have a lot of, I have this discussion a lot with people that, talk about commercial versus creative or credibility. And I'm like, the people that have a lot of commercial success, I believe, have genuine commercial taste. You're not trying to be commercial. You're not trying to be smart or clever.
Right.
I don't believe in that.
Right.
Even stuff that I find horribly commercial, that's even more commercial than what we do, I don't think that they sit there and try to figure something out. I think they actually like it.
Yeah.
I am so happy to have started this new series with the four of us. Thank you so, so much for this wonderful panel. See you outside. Thank you.